All right, welcome everyone, and welcome to another build session with DevPost. I'm Darlise, aka Darveloper. I'm the developer marketing manager here at DevPost. And for anyone who's newer to us, DevPost's mission is to inspire developers, creatives, builders, technologists to build great software. We're creating a world where everyone who wants to improve their craft or be inspired to build comes to DevPost for that inspiration. So to that end, we power most of the world's software hackathons on our platform, including this one, which is Agentic Cinema. Agentic Cinema is a hackathon from Google Cloud Partnerships where you'll be building a functional AI agent powered by Gemini and Google Cloud Agent Builder that solves real bottlenecks across entertainment and the media world, leveraging technology from our various partners, including ClickHouse, who we're working with today. So you'll be building solutions, and I hope you're building solutions, but you'll be building solutions for filmmakers, screenwriters, studio crews, or fans. I am a big movie fan. So if you create a solution, you create an agent that will help me, I would love that. But I'll leave everything else up to the ClickHouse people, Andre and Zoe. I'll let them introduce themselves and I'll let them take it away.
Hi, my name is Andre. Thank you, Darlise, for having us today. Just to introduce myself, I'm curriculum developer at ClickHouse. So basically, what I do there, I build trainings around ClickHouse. In particular, I'm working with the observability use case and also with building agents using ClickHouse. And today, I will be guiding you on what actually ClickHouse is and how could you use ClickHouse with Google Gemini for building the project that you are doing in this hackathon. Not sure if Zoe, do you want to do any introductions before I start?
Yeah, I am the developer advocate here at ClickHouse, and so I'm just here mostly to help Andre, answer some questions and such. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, and I'll go ahead and grab at them as he presents.
Okay, so let's keep going then. So first of all, I wanted to talk to you about what exactly is ClickHouse. So first of all, ClickHouse is a one open source project. Just to give you a perspective of how ClickHouse started, how this project started, ClickHouse is basically a database, but different from traditional databases that are transactional databases. ClickHouse is more built towards the analytics use case. And basically, the project ClickHouse started around 2009. It was a project that was built inside a company called Yandex in Russia. And basically, what they were doing back then, they were trying to build an analytics system to build a click stream database. And that's where the name actually comes from because ClickHouse meaning is that is a database that you are going to store click streams in a data warehouse. So then once you have all these click streams stored, you can do any kind of analytics on top of this data. So by 2012, then these actually became going into production. And by 2016, since this was a very successful project inside Yandex, the creator Alexei Milovdov, he decided to open source this code so more people could be start using this project. And this also started to be a very successful database system in GitHub. So around 2020, Alexei got together with Yuri and Steve and Aaron Katz, and they decided to build a company around ClickHouse. And the main idea was that help people actually using ClickHouse without needing to actually run ClickHouse on their own. And basically, this company started building what we know today as ClickHouse Cloud. And what we are going to use today for actually showing to you how ClickHouse actually runs and how we can use ClickHouse. So before going into that, I want to talk to you. So why is then ClickHouse so powerful? Why people actually use ClickHouse for doing analytics on top of data? To explain that, I have to go back and kind of compare why ClickHouse is not like a traditional database. ClickHouse is not storing data using rows. Basically, in a traditional database management system, what you are going to do, you are going to store data in rows, and probably you want to tie one ID to this row so you can find these rows, find the description for what is stored in this row. Instead, what ClickHouse does is actually storing data into columns. Why ClickHouse store data into columns? Because different from a transactional database, we don't want to find one particular row. Of course, you can do that, but when you are using ClickHouse, instead, what you want to do, you want to store a lot of data, and then on top of this data, you want to run queries that will actually aggregate or do any sort of analytics on top of data. When this data is stored in columns, it's much easier to actually process this data. And also, we have another advantages when using columns to store data, because since you are storing data in columns, you can order the way that this data is stored in disk, and you can actually also implement some compression on top of this data, making it much easier and use less storage to store your data. This makes ClickHouse very cheap for storing lots of data, but the fact that the data is also sorted and compressed on disk, when you run these queries, this is what actually helps making ClickHouse very, very fast to process very big volumes of analytical data, because you can also tell ClickHouse how you can skip data. And with this ClickHouse, when you run a query, you can actually see what needs to be processed or not processed. And then you can just drop data that doesn't make any sense for processing your query. And this is what actually makes ClickHouse very fast for running queries. Also different from some other analytical databases, ClickHouse does not implement one specific language to talk to ClickHouse. Instead, what we do, we use ANSI SQL. So most of you probably you are already very familiar with you are already familiar with SQL. And since ClickHouse already speaks SQL, you don't need to worry about learning like a new language for working with ClickHouse. If you are already, for example, working with Postgres or some other traditional database system, and you already have your data there, and you just want to bring to ClickHouse for running queries, you can use all the schemas that you already have in your database, because the types will be compatible, and you can just create basically the same tables you have in your Postgres database, and then you can connect to ClickHouse and sync the data between these two systems. And then instead of running analytical queries on Postgres, that will be much more costly and it will take longer to execute, you can then run these queries in ClickHouse. And then all these that I mentioned to you also makes ClickHouse easier to scale. The fact that the data is stored in columns makes it much easier to vectorize queries when you are running queries in more than one CPU, since the data is also sorted and stored in disk sorted. It makes it very easy to ClickHouse to get this data and process the query in parallel. And once each node process their part of the query, then you can aggregate this data and provide the result to the person that actually wrote the query. Okay, yeah, so I saw some question in the chat. Yeah, so for now, I'm not just transitioning slides yet, but I will just start very soon. I was just trying to give first a perspective on what is ClickHouse, but trying to avoid going into big deep holes or rabbit holes here because the focus is more like on how to use ClickHouse for AI with ClickHouse MCP. And this was just like the first um, the first part of this process. And then we have another question here. How big data sets can be to work in ClickHouse? Yeah, thanks, Zoe. It can be really billions, like Chloe mentioned. We have very interesting benchmarks. Zoe, if you can send the link for the benchmarks, I think it's really interesting for people to see how it compares to other databases. So for uh, for this presentation, we are going to use ClickHouse Cloud, but you can go to GitHub, you can download ClickHouse. It's open source, you can run on your own. But when you access ClickHouse Cloud, you can create a free trial account. You will have some credits. You can use them to build this project. It will be really nice because then you can really explore the power of ClickHouse. Because then here, when you are running ClickHouse on ClickHouse Cloud, you are going to use one provider like GCP, and you are going to have uh, three replicas running for your service. So this can really you can really see how ClickHouse works on running the database in more than just one node. And of course, you can also pick a region that is close to you. So just I picked this one because it's the one that is more close to me in this case. Then, of course, once you have created your service, you probably want to add some data. If you just want to play around with ClickHouse, I suggest you using the sample data that we have already available in ClickHouse Cloud. So you go to data sources in the left hand, then you click on add sample data. You will have three different sample data sets. In particular, for this presentation, we are going to use the UK property price paid. Basically, this data set is containing the price paid for all property sold in the UK from 1995, I think, or something like that, until today, or 2025, something like that. So once you import this data set, it's really nice because behind the scenes, ClickHouse Cloud will be creating all the table that you actually need with all the types and the schema that you need for running queries on top of this data. But if you have this data stored somewhere else, let's say in a CSV or in another file, you can create the table yourself. Here in this case, I'm using only nullable strings just because in this case, we might have we are going to see one example where you bring a CSV that is stored in object store, and then you insert into ClickHouse. So that's the reason why I'm using all strings, because basically in this file I have only strings. But if I wanted, I could convert to the proper types while importing this data. Not doing this right now because just for simplicity. And like I was talking to you before, so here the engine, we call it merge tree, because basically what it will do once you are ingesting data, ClickHouse will try to combine all this data into less parts as it can on disk. So it makes it easier for it load and then run queries. And remember, I was telling you that ClickHouse stores data into columns. This means that uh, every item in this table is actually a column. Like ID will be a column, prices is another column. right? So, and I also mentioned that in ClickHouse you order data, so it makes for ClickHouse to find this data faster and also skip data in case you want to run queries faster. In this case, how do we do that? We do this with this primary key statement in the create table. And then in this case, I'm saying to ClickHouse that I want to order the data by date. Why I'm doing this? Because probably my queries I'm filtering out by date. And since if I'm filtering like I want to see the price for last year, for example, then I can just keep all the data from the 90s and really just use the last year. And that's how I can tell ClickHouse to skip data when running queries and running queries faster. And then if you have this file stored somewhere else, you can just insert into this file from whatever bucket you have in any kind of object storage. And once the data is inside ClickHouse, I can start running queries. For example, since we are talking about the property price paid in the UK dataset, we can ask something like, what is the average of all property prices? And this is actually a very simple query in ClickHouse. You can run just a select, and you are going to run the average function on top of the price column. And then notice that I'm using from UK prices because that's the name of the table that we just did. And why I'm doing a conversion here to int? Because remember, in this example, instead of using the schema that was created by the load table that we had here, I use a more simplified version with all strings. So since I'm doing one average function here, it's expecting one int, so I'm converting the string to an int so I can use it here. But of course, the purpose here is not actually run queries in ClickHouse. I mean, by hand, of course. The purpose is not for you to write your SQL queries because the purpose here is, okay, so now you already understand what is ClickHouse, what is the purpose of ClickHouse, and that ClickHouse is a very fast database. And this is actually one of the reasons that ClickHouse is also well suited for running with agents, because what we want to do, we want to use ClickHouse as a real-time database system. And what we want to build one agent layer that is going to sit on top of ClickHouse. And we want our users to actually write these queries in natural language, like what is the average price of all property prices. And then we actually want agents to get this and run the query on top of ClickHouse. And why do that with ClickHouse? Because ClickHouse, different from other database systems, it can run queries very, very fast. And since agents run a lot of queries on the database system to actually really get the answer that you want, you need a database system that can couple with running a lot of queries and then going in this back and forth with the agent so it can then generate the answer that you want the agent to provide. This is possible because ClickHouse can run really sub-second queries over billions of rows in ClickHouse, all because this column-oriented fashion that I mentioned and the fact that ClickHouse is storing data sorted by the primary key and data is also compressed on disk, making ClickHouse very suited for running this type of queries on this agentic fashion. On top of that, if you are running ClickHouse on ClickHouse Cloud, you have MCP already out of the box. If you are running open source, then you can also connect the ClickHouse MCP server to your ClickHouse instance running. But since the fact that we are talking about ClickHouse Cloud, here we are talking about really you don't need any code. You just need to enable the MCP server in ClickHouse Cloud and then connect to your application and start running queries. And like the compression I already mentioned, this makes very easy to access historical data, especially if we are talking about huge amounts of data that if you lose a little tiny of data, you lose historical data. In ClickHouse, you don't need to worry about that because since we are talking about ClickHouse Cloud, another very interesting fact of running ClickHouse on cloud is that when you create a service, the uh, what you are actually paying is for compute because all the data is going to be stored in the object storage of the provider that you are using, and this makes much cheaper to store data. And compared to other database systems, you can store much more data, making you able to store historical data for less money. And the fact that ClickHouse talks SQL, this makes very well suited also to build agents on top of ClickHouse because agents can't write SQL very well and they can understand SQL. So it's very easy to then to translate something written in English to SQL and then talk to the database and provide to you back an answer in English as well. So, like I mentioned, when you access the ClickHouse Cloud, it will be very easy. You are going to enable the MCP protocol in your service, and then all the authentication goes through ClickHouse Cloud. You don't need to manage also authentication in a very convoluted way in your application, making it very easy to integrate with ClickHouse Cloud. Then what you can do when you enable the ClickHouse MCP server, you can query the data schema that you have for the tables that you have in the database. And in particular, if you are using ClickHouse Cloud, then you can also manage the organizations you have, the services that you have, and all other information or metadata that is actually really related to ClickHouse Cloud, and not just the databases and the data that you have inside ClickHouse. We also have another MCP server. So when you enable the MCP server in ClickHouse Cloud, by default, you are enabling the ClickHouse Cloud MCP server that is suited for talking to ClickHouse in SQL. But we also, in ClickHouse, we have the observability use case. In this case, you are actually interested in monitoring applications. So if you are monitoring applications with ClickHouse, then you can also use the ClickStack MCP server. Basically, the ClickStack MCP server will allow you to build dashboards, alerts, and visualizations on top of this observability data like logs, metrics, and traces. I'm not going into many details here because it's not really the focus of this presentation, but it's really nice to understand because maybe in another project, if you are going to use something related to observability, then you already know that you also have the ClickStack MCP server in ClickHouse Cloud. And then once you have your service running, you have data in it, you have the MCP server enabled, then that question that we just answered writing the SQL query, you can just type to your agent. You can connect your agent to the to ClickHouse through MCP, and then you can type that query, and the agent will run the query for you. And in the data set here, I'm using the sample data set, and then one answer will be provided. Okay, so that's what I had to talk about ClickHouse. But now, how can you actually connect the Google Gemini APIs with ClickHouse through the ClickHouse MCP server? So basically, here I will demo one application for you that I was building to show you how you can actually type that question in a chatbot using Gemini and then getting back that same answer that we see here. So for doing that, the requirements that I have, I'm using Python greater than 3.11. And then I'm also using the Google ADK, that is the Agent Development Kit 271. And I'm using MCP1 because I'm not sure if it works with Google with the Google 271. So I couldn't get working, but I could get working with one. So that's the reason. Then I'm also using HTTPX to run the queries through this protocol to the MCP server. and the python.env because I'm loading the Gemini API key using one.env file. So uh, what I did before starting building this project, actually the demo that I'm going to show to you, I went to the AI Studio. I created a Gemini key in this link, and then I added this API key to the Gemini API key environment variable in my .env file. Another thing that I did, I also got the service ID from my ClickHouse Cloud instance because by default, when you enable the MCP server in ClickHouse, it will look into all the services that you have enabled the MCP protocol in your organization. So since I wanted to restrict only to this service that I'm using for the demo, I also created this environment variable to use a particular ClickHouse service for this demo. Then what we need to do. So the first thing that we actually need to do is connect to the ClickHouse MCP server, and this can be done through the MCP toolset library. Then what you are going to do, you instead of using just header, actually I'm using the header underscore provider here because in ClickHouse Cloud tokens will expire every hour. So you want some mechanism to actually get a token and then refresh this token from time to time so you can keep your connection live with ClickHouse and keep talking to ClickHouse using the MCP server. And then so what we actually do, how we do that, we define two functions here. One is access token to get the access token and store this access token. And if the access token is not valid anymore, then we use a function called refresh access token that will actually refresh the access token so we can keep using the connection to ClickHouse through MCP and then using Gemini to ask questions. And then how we actually implement the agent, this is very simple. What I need to do, I just need to import this LLM agent from the agents in the Google ADK library. And then what I'm configuring here, I'm configuring the model, which I'm using Gemini 3.7 Flash for this example. And then I also created one agent that here I named it as ClickHouse Analyst. And I provided like some instructions here on how it should behave, that it should use the service ID that I provided in my environment file. And look that I don't need to specify the Gemini API key here because the Google Gen AI will know that it should look into this environment variable in the system. So then it can actually connect to Gemini and then use the model to run the queries with this agent that we are creating. Okay, and then now let me just show you. So first of all, I have to wake my service in ClickHouse because in ClickHouse, when you create one service, by default, it will go idle after 15 minutes. So if you are not using, you actually stopping the service automatic, so you are not charged. And here is like the query that I was mentioning to you. So here it will take some time to run because there's some networking going on, and I just started the service. So like I mentioned to you in the here is the data sources. If you click here, you will see there is an add sample data. Since I already loaded this, it should, maybe I have to reload here. So I already have here, let me see. Default. Something going on here. Okay. So you see, very fast, this query run. Look, I process, look how ClickHouse is very fast. I process this much of rows to run this query, and it took really around 3 milliseconds here, very, very fast to process and give me the average price. So if I go here, see that I already have it loaded here. And to enable the MCP server, you go to connect and you click here in MCP. I already enabled this and it will provide here the link that I use to actually connect to the MCP server. And here is the application that I have running and configure with Gemini. So I can, for instance, ask to list my tables. And then what it will do behind the scenes, it will use Gemini to query ClickHouse. It will use the list tables from the MCP tool that I'm using. And in this is a very simple service that I just loaded that UK property price paid. So now I can actually ask here, what is the average property price? And then it will probably return that same similar query that we run and that same result. Look how it is actually talking to ClickHouse right now and trying to figure out what is inside the table there, and then so it will provide the answer for us. So let's just wait a few moments. Usually is a bit faster. This is the problem of live demos. Usually they don't like to, okay, let's see. Yeah, so running the SQL query. Now, okay, so it gave me really the exact same answer. And now, since we have one agent, we can now start asking more questions like what is the most expensive neighborhood in London, for example. And let's see what it gets from the data set that we have. So look now, it's much faster because it already knows our schema and how the data is stored, and it can run and a query. Look how now it generated a more interesting query than just the average price that we seen here. And it also provided some feedback like what is the postcode for the neighborhood, what is the average price. So it's really interesting what you can build using ClickHouse and Gemini together. And also now just to kind of finish and wrap up, so you can also use Google Gemini Enterprise. That is just a different way of connecting to ClickHouse Cloud through MCP. Then in this case, you don't need one API. The authentication will go through the credentials that you have in Google Gemini Enterprise, if that is the case. But then what you need to do, you have to enable Google Gemini Enterprise in your .env. You can specify the project that you're using and the location, so it can actually use Google Gemini Enterprise instead of using the AI Studio that we were using for the demo. And finally, now we will have some time for Q&A, but just wanted to raise awareness that we have one AI assistant in cloud that you can use. We also have AI docs, we have online support. Please feel free to contact us through support. And we also have a channel, or don't know how you call it in Discord, something that you can talk and ask questions. We are happy to help you get started and work on your project using ClickHouse. Okay. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions that is left. And
Amazing.
thank you very much for joining us in this presentation, and hope you enjoy it and learn something today.
Amazing. I think Zoe got to a lot of the questions in the chat. And yes, we will share the link for this recording after this as well. Don't worry. And then any links that were dropped during this session, we'll drop it in an email, but also in our Discord as well. So for anyone who has any questions, you can type them in the chat. You can ask in the Q&A feature, or if you're feeling brave, you're absolutely free to raise your hand and come off of the mic. But in the meantime, I'll just do our typical spiel, a little bit of a wrap up here. First of all, I want to thank ClickHouse. I want to thank Andre. I want to thank Zoe so much for attending and doing this build session here at DevPost. If you all have 2 minutes, everyone who's watching, we'd really appreciate you filling out this short survey that kind of lets us know basically how we did. So it helps us improve future sessions, if the timing works, if the pacing works, did we cover everything that you needed? So if you could take 2 minutes to fill that out, that would be greatly appreciated. Another reminder, this will be recorded. It will be on our YouTube, so you can catch us at youtube.com/@devposthq. I'll drop that in the chat as well. But every resource will be shared via email. And if any questions come up after this, whether it's about ClickHouse, whether it's about the hackathon in general, you can reach out via Discord. You can also reach out via the hackathon discussion board that is on the hackathon page as well. Awesome. And then I see one question about, is there any coupon from ClickHouse for this hackathon? Okay, so we're asking about credits.
Yeah, that's a great question. Zoe, you have any, when you create a trial account,
Yeah,
you,
we
you
have a
already have
link
some credits.
in the hackathon. Like if you click on the hackathon page, the main page, and then you click on ClickHouse, we have a link there for free credits. That's about $400 worth of credits, which we think will get everyone through the hackathon. The bigger
Mm-hmm.
question that I'm trying to answer, which is slightly above, is if, and this is kind of a Google question as well as a ClickHouse question. So we don't mind if you use the open source MCP ClickHouse server or the ClickHouse Cloud managed MCP endpoint. We don't personally care. Both are fine for the hackathon. I don't know for Gemini's Enterprise. I don't know about that one, or if the standard Google ADK is all right. I would assume the standard Google ADK plus Gemini is all right, but that is going to be a question that you're going to need to confirm with the Google team themselves because I can't tell you, and I don't want to set you up for failure. Um,
Yeah.
and then the
And
last
mhm.
question is about writing into it. Sorry, it's a question with 4 different steps.
Gotcha. Okay. So for these questions, I would say definitely ask the question in the discussion board of the hackathon because these are going to go to one DevPost support team, and then we can route the questions to whoever is best for answering that question. And yeah, want to make sure you get the right answers. I see 2 questions in the Q&A if you want to take those, Zoe.
I actually don't know. So I was about to say, I don't know the answer to the first question, which is how many people are signed up for the ClickHouse section.
Oh, wow.
I actually think when you sign up for the hackathon, I don't always think you actually say which technologies you're going to use. I think it's more of a you just sign up for the hackathon and then we have to wait to see the submissions.
Yeah, that's
And
about
then how
right.
can ClickHouse help in the Agentic Cinema Hackathon is basically that ClickHouse is your underlying backend for storing data that then your agents are going to interact with via the MCP server. So just imagine, I hate to say it, but just imagine ClickHouse is like a giant data warehouse, basically. Like, yes, it's an analytical database, as Andre just explained, but in general, it's great for storing all the data that your agent's going to need to read from. And it's very fast, too. That's a big thing.
All right, and we have one more question that just popped up. We'll use that as our last question. Let's see. When a Gemini agent generates SQL against ClickHouse autonomously, what's the recommended guardrail? Read-only DB users, query allow listing, a query validator layer to stop it from running a destructive or runaway full table scan query. That's Akshat's question.
Andre, do you by any chance know the answer to this one? I feel like the answer is that I thought we kind of already have guardrails in place when you do the queries, but I'm not quite certain.
Um, yeah, I'm just checking. Just give me a moment. I
Not
don't
a
know this
problem.
by. I'm just having to check here documentation. Just one quick second.
No worries. And if we have to answer it async, that's fine as well. Awesome. All
So it
right.
does look like there is the capability to have query complexity limits, which would be like your runaway query protection. Here, I'm going to add a piece of code in here, so then it's in here in particular. But basically what that was saying is that you would have the settings to have like max result rows to read, and max execution time. And that would kind of help it in case there's like in general I actually put this question in the ClickHouse Docs AI, and it kind of gave me a lot, like way more than this. And so I would definitely do the same, where you just put this question into the Docs AI, and then it will link you to all the different documentation about this one.
Amazing. All right. I think that'll be our last question just to keep under time. But I want to thank everyone for showing up today. And I also want to say good luck to everyone who's building. Good luck to everyone who's thinking about building or thinking about signing up, especially if you're participating in the ClickHouse track as well. And again, if you have any questions or if there are questions that we didn't get to today, we'll answer those asynchronously, but you can find us in Discord. You can also find us in the discussions board of the hackathon page itself. All right. Thank you all, everyone. And don't forget to fill out that survey. Thank you.